Hello and welcome to the Wildlife Moto channel. So today we can officially announce that Royal Enfield is bringing us a brand new Bullet for 2024. This announcement wraps up days of speculation, but the big question remains, will the new Bullet live up to the great expectations that inevitably this historic bike will always carry? Let's jump in and take a look. So during the last few days, you might have noticed there's been this countdown on the Royal Enfield website. It's ticking away. We've had this carousel listing what looked like a whole new range of Royal Enfield Bullet bikes for 2024. Now in that list we had a Bullet 500, there was a Bullet 350, there was a Bullet Electra, a 65 and a mysterious Bullet E. Now if you know your Royal Enfields, you'll know that 4 out of those 5 bikes are pre-existing models. They're bikes that we've already seen throughout the past. We don't know much about the Bullet E, and I have to say it's Friday afternoon here in the UK and we still don't know anything about it, but we'll get into that. But most of those bikes have existed in some form in the past. So the Bullet 350 of course is the purest form of the Bullet, really, isn't it? It's the one that started it all back in the 1930s. It's been in constant iteration ever since. Then the Bullet 500, that was also showcased in the carousel, that's been around since the 1990s. The Electra, that was the first Royal Enfield Bullet to have electronic ignition, not an electric starter as some people would seem to think. That was around in the early 2000s. Also in the noughties, for a brief run, we saw a Bullet 65, which wasn't a 650, it was a 500, with the main difference being it had a split seat. So most of these bikes are from Royal Enfield's history, with the Bullet E being something we don't know much about and still don't. The only thing that I can sit here and tell you about today is the all-new Royal Enfield Bullet 350, because that's the one that got announced. And it's left some people kind of scratching their heads a little bit, because I think some people were thinking, okay, are we going to get a whole new range of Bullets? Maybe we still will. Maybe it's just been the 350 that's been announced first. Or could it be that that carousel was just a bit of a celebration of the past, present and future Bullets that we might see, with the only current bike we're going to get being the 350, and maybe at some point in the future an electric Bullet E. It's all speculation. We don't know. So for 2024, what are we going to get? What's going to be new? Is this bike going to live up to its sky-high expectations? Don't forget, this is the bike that really Royal Enfield's built on. This is the foundational machine. So what is it? Well, I can tell you, it's pretty much a classic 350 with a new tank and a new seat. Now, at face value, that might seem a little bit disappointing, but actually, I think Royal Enfield have absolutely nailed it with this bike. So bear with me and we'll go through some of the specs and I'll give you my thoughts on it, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. So let's start off with the engine. Yes, it uses the same J series engine as we get in the classic 350 today, and the smaller Meteor as well. It's a pretty simple setup, a single cylinder long stroke EFI single overhead cam unit, the same used in the classic 350 as I said. The tuning might be slightly different on this version. Royal Enfield are going big on the sound of the Bullet in the launch. We've even uploaded a little sample that you can listen to. So it might be that they do something with the tuning just to make it sound a little bit more Bullet-esque, but we'll have to see what happens there. The frame on the bike is also borrowed from the classic 350, very simple twin spar down tube affair that cradles that 350 lump. The suspension looks very similar as well. Up front we've got big 41mm forks with that kind of telescopic design, very similar looking telescopic shocks on the back of the bike as well. We get a 300mm front disc brake with dual channel ABS, and colour wise there's quite a few options to choose from. I think one of my personal favourites is the slightly more expensive black gold version. What we've got here is obviously a black and gold tank and a blacked out engine with blacked out wheels too. Now I do like the kind of shiny aluminium look that you get on these classic Enfields. However, if you can't be bothered to constantly have to polish the thing and keep it looking as good as you want it to look, the blacked out option might be a good one to go for. So if you're a little bit pressed for time, then this one's certainly going to be the easiest to look after, I would have thought. And I quite like the look at it. I think the tank looks really nice as well. The blacked out wheels looks really nice. If you want to go for a more standard look, there is the standard black, which has a black and gold tank with those beautiful gold pinstripes. You get the raw alley engine, and you've got silver wheels on this model too. Then you've also got a maroon version with a maroon tank, gold pinstripes, and that's got silver wheels. Then you've got a military black, which again has a more plain black tank. That's also got blacked out wheels on that model too. And it's the same setup for the military red, only obviously the tank is going to be red on that one. So what are my thoughts then on the new Bullet for 2024? Well, despite its similarities to the classic 350, I really like what Royal Enfield have done with this bike. I think people who bought that single seat classic 350 might be looking at this and thinking, that was the one to hold out for. Not everybody, but some people might look at this and think, that's actually a better bike in some ways. Putting the classic 350 and the Bullet next to each other, for me, to my eyes, it now almost looks like the classic 350 is kind of missing something on the back of the bike, whereas the Bullet looks a lot more complete, a lot more rounded. And that's thanks to that dual seat and the slightly chunkier mudguard at the back. It just feels like it's got a lot more balance to the design. I particularly like how the tank kind of, merges into the seat in a much more pleasing way than you get on the classic, to my eyes. Now, of course, if you like that bobber style look, then the classic 350 is going to be the way to go. But if you want a bike that just feels a little bit more classically styled, in line with the original Bullet, then obviously this is the one to go for. And if you ride pillion, clearly you have no choice. It's either that or the Meteor, and I much prefer this, much prefer the Bullet over and above the Meteor, I've got to say. I think from a design standpoint, this is the best of the 350s in the range. The other thing to consider with this bike is, of course, it wears the Bullet moniker. And that is not something to be taken lightly. This is the flagship brand for Royal Enfield. This is the one that evokes all the nostalgia, all the memories, and of course it's the bike that holds the record for being in continuous production for a longer period of time than any other motorcycle. So it is the one that everybody's going to stop and go, oh my God, that's a Bullet. And they'll probably say to you, you've done a fantastic job of restoring that bike. I get it on the Interceptor all the time. It's a little bit embarrassing when I have to tell them it's pretty much brand new. But anyway, that's the one that's going to draw the most attention, I think, from a branding standpoint. And as I said, I think it's probably the most practical bike as well. If you like to ride two up, if you like to go out with luggage that you can potentially strap to the back seat, and opens up kind of more luggage for throw over panniers and things like that. Again, this is going to be a slightly more usable version of the bike. The only thing that's kind of confusing me and kind of holding me back from wanting to rush out and buy one is I'm still not sure what's to come in the Bullet line. I'm still thinking in the back of my head, are we going to see a re-released Bullet 500? Because for me, if Royal Enfield were to give us a new air-cooled single 500, it would be the first time since about 2020 when it was on the classic 500. If they were to bring us that under the Bullet brand, then I would be all over it like an absolute rash, because I think that gives us a combination of that classic style plus a slightly more usable power profile for our faster roads here in the UK. So that would be the one I'd hold out for. Who knows if we'll actually see it. For now, we've got the 350, and I've got to say, I think Royal Enfield have done a brilliant job with it. I know some of the purists were probably thinking it's a bit of a cop-out, just kind of building it off the classic 350, but I think it's got enough subtle differences in there to make it stand out in the range. Whether or not you agree that it's a genuine Bullet is another conversation, and always one that's going to be hotly debated, but that's what we've got coming down the line for 2024. It will be out with the old, which was still in production in India, but not over here in the UK. But this is going to be available, we know, in the UK, obviously in India, and we'll have to wait and see in terms of the release schedule for the rest of the world. So that's what we've got, that's what it is. I'll keep you up to date if we get any more news from Royal Enfield in terms of other bikes in that lineup that are coming down the track. We don't know at the moment. As I said, the clock has hit 0, and that's what we've got today. A new Bullet 350 hitting the showrooms in 2024. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Until the next one, ride safe.